We previously created the resolver to add items to the cart. We updated our GraphQL schema, and inside of graphical, we ran a mutation to add items to our cart. We also returned the unit total, line total as the money type, and we updated the overall subtotal and total items from the cart to reflect the status of our cart items. Inside of Prisma Studio, if we go back and create a new tab and we have a look at cart item, we can see here if we refresh that we have one shirt in our database. If we go back to our cart and we refresh, we can now see that the 1 week GraphQL has one item attached. But what if we wanted to remove this cart item from the cart? Well, we've got no way to do that just yet with our GraphQL schema. We have no mutation to do that, and that's what we'll do in this video. Inside of our code, let's open the schema.graphql file, and we'll add a new mutation, and here we'll call this remove item. And similar to what we did above, we'll add our argument as input, and we'll give it this input type and name of remove from cart, and we'll append that with input. This will be non-nullable, and it will return a cart. Then further on down, below our existing input type, we'll add a new input type using the same name, remove from cart input, and here we'll pass a ID, and we'll also need to pass to this input type the actual cart ID, and these will both be of the type ID. Now, let's stop our server, and we'll run npm run codegen. This will update the types.ts file. Now inside of types.ts, if we make a search for remove from cart input, we can now see that this type has been used throughout our types.ts file and has been correctly resolved to our resolver types. So this gives us great safety when writing our resolvers, and we'll do that next. Inside of our API index file, inside of a resolver map for mutation, we're going to do something similar to what we did with add item. Now inside of our mutation resolver map, here we can see that we need to specify the remove item resolver. And here we'll call async, we'll ignore the first argument, and from the second we'll fetch input, and from the third argument we'll fetch Prisma from our GraphQL context. Then we'll call out to Prisma by using await Prisma, and we'll say cart item dot delete. And here we need to specify where, using the special unique constraint ID underscore cart ID, here we'll need to provide the values for ID itself, which will be input.id, and for the cart ID, this will be input.cartID. Then we want to go ahead and select just the ID of the cart from the response. So we'll say select cart ID true. And from the result of await Prisma cart item.delete, we actually want to destructure from the response cart ID. Then we can return find or create cart, and we can pass it Prisma, and we can fetch and pass that cart ID. Now if we restart our Next.js server and head over to graphical, we should now see inside of mutation that we have add item and remove item that we just created. If we click on remove item, we can see the arguments that it takes has the input type remove from cart input, and this takes an ID and the cart ID. If we now open a new tab, and this time we provide a mutation and we'll call remove item, here to the input we'll provide the ID of the item, which will be 1, and then we'll specify the cart ID, and we previously called this 1 week GraphQL. Then if we go and get the total items, and we get the subtotal, and the formatted and the raw amount, if we now run this, you can see here that all of the items have been removed from the cart. If we head on over to Prisma Studio, and we now refresh, you can see here that the number of items is 0. If we go to the cart item tab and refresh, we can see here that there are no rows. That removed all of the cart items from the database, and they are no longer connected to our cart.